All of a sudden you might notice friends aren't trying to set up that person anymore because that common denominator is that person. And pretty soon, even though the friends think, man, that's a great person, in the back of their minds, they're saying, there must be something wrong because on the surface, this person looks great.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Glen Gilbert. I am the host of the Glen Gilbert Connection, relationship discussions for today's man. Joining me today is a very special guest, Shari Leid. Shari has a bachelor's in psychology and a doctorate in jurisprudence, which led to a 15-year career as a trial attorney. She has authored several books, a podcaster, and through all of this, you were able to raise 2 children and have 2 chocolate labs.
1 chocolate and 1 yellow lab.
1 yellow.
Yeah.
Okay,
Used to have a black lab too, so
okay. Oh,
covered all bases.
But that's really amazing. Congratulations on all your success. It sounds like you really worked hard to get there.
Thank you. Thanks. And still grinding.
Good. Absolutely perfect. We know you're also a connection coach. That's basically the reason why I wanted to have you on the show, is so you can discuss, what does that mean? What is a connection coach?
Yeah, I go in, well, right now I've gone from coaching individuals, and I still do that some, but I've really gotten into coaching businesses. But the way it starts with connection, first we talk about being aligned in your personal life, then your business, then your community. So connection, your personal life, business, and community. Because as we all know, if you're not connected in your personal life, you're not going to feel connected at work or business.
Right.
I always want to, if I ever go in for let's just say a surgery, I always want to know how the doctor is doing at home. How's his home life? Because you need to feel connected in yourself first before anything else.
That kind of reminds me of when, and maybe you can relate to this, it's like you don't want to go to court in the evening or afternoon because the judge is going to be like, you're staying in jail.
Yeah.
Something like that. Like in the mornings, the judge is like, oh yeah, I feel good. But the length of time, they're just like, all right, you're done. Forget about it. Anyway.
I bet you're right. I didn't think about that, but I know you just definitely don't want to go on a Friday afternoon.
Right. They want to get out of there and okay, you're staying in jail.
Or anytime. We don't want to go to court anytime.
Oh, true. That's a great point. Yeah. Stay away from court. Yeah. I'd kind of like to talk about your father a little bit and how he was a role model and how maybe he inspired you to get to where you are. I mean, obviously you're very successful. You worked very hard to get there. And did he play any kind of role in that? How impactful was he? Did he provide that drive, that ambition to help you succeed? Yeah,
so I'm adopted from Korea, and so my father is my adoptive father, but of course my dad all the way through. And he passed away when I was 31.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Yeah. But he and I were best friends. He was the one I would call several times during the day. He was funny, very smart. And, one thing that he said, so he was Japanese American, born in Seattle, actually on Main Street. Oh. And there was a generation between us. So he actually was interned. Yeah. The Japanese Americans were interned if they're on the West Coast during World War II. But he was the oldest son of immigrant parents. And he was raised with the idea that he could do no wrong and he had to perform 5 times better than his white counterparts in school. And he actually thought that held him back. Ooh. That pressure held him back. So he purposefully raised me to be okay with making mistakes.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And being okay with taking risks because he thought he didn't take, and he ended up becoming an engineer and very, by the book. And so he thought that that held him back from a lot of things that he could do. He said it made it harder to be a parent to allow me to take risks. But honestly, you asked about drive. I really think his biggest impact on me was raising me to feel it's okay to fail as long as I look at these things, so-called failures, and learn from them. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, instead of getting down on yourself, the voice in your head is like, it's just another opportunity.
And not to be perfect. I don't have to be perfect, and it's okay. I always say it's easy to make ugly pretty. It's hard to make perfect better.
Right.
So, if I have an idea, I start out, and it might start out ugly.
Right.
We can always improve.
That was the first thing I learned with podcasting is obviously this is so new for me, and I was like, I think I spent months just agonizing over, it's not going to be perfect. I got to make sure it's like, I have to have a setup that's right, and do I have a script that's right? And worrying about all of these other things. And then it just I think it was just like the feedback I got is just put something out there, just start.
Yeah.
Just do it. Take the chance. So that's great. He instilled that in you. It's like, it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah, it's okay to make mistakes as long as, you look at that and learn from it.
Right.
So he instilled in me this idea of reflection. And, you mentioned drive, and I've been trying to figure this out. Is drive something nature or is it nurture? And it's probably a mixture of both. I think I always had drive, but I don't know if having drive and being afraid to make mistakes, if that would have held me back. So having drive and being able to go for it and just know that no matter what happens, it'll be okay because I can figure it out. And that's confidence. That's my definition of confidence, is knowing that whatever happens, you can figure it out.
Interesting. And the thing of drive, just the lack of, I guess, fear, lack of like, okay, I accept mistakes. They're going to happen. Where did I see that? There was some quote, success is driven by like 1,000 failures or something like that.
Yeah. There's that story. There's stories about Michael Jordan and what is that? He didn't make his high school
got cut
varsity team or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But it worked. Basketball seemed to work out for him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, okay, I'm going to get disappointed. I'm going to get, I'm going to fail at something, but to accept that, to be like, it's okay. And to use it as a bit of a learning tool, to be like, okay, this is, maybe a mistake I did here. What can I do differently to get a better output next time?
Right. We talk about that with connection, right? In our personal relationships.
Right.
I mean, we're going to mess up, right? The other person might mess up. We're human. Right. And it's where do we go from there? Right.
I think a lot of it has to go with, to do with, are you willing to look at what you might have done? Could I have done something to improve it? Or I think a lot of guys, when they get out of a long-term relationship, they're just like, okay, I just got to get into another one right away and blah, blah, blah. And not even look at, what were some of the issues that might have come up? What could have, they look at themselves and go, what could have I have done differently? What could have I have done better? And then maybe that might have helped to lead the relationship, maybe do something different for a different outcome.
Yeah, otherwise you keep making the same, I don't mean you personally, but you in general, keep making the same mistake over and over again. And we see it happen. We see it happen in our own lives. We see it happen with our friends.
Mm-hmm. I think this is an old joke, and I know Nathan's heard this before. My producer's heard this before. It's like the wealthy guy goes in to see his therapist, and he sits down. He's like, I just don't know what's going on. I've been married and divorced 5 times now, and I don't know what's going on with these women out there. And she's like, you're the common denominator. What? And just having the lack of awareness of like, okay, these issues keep happening.
Yes.
What are they doing, rather than taking accountability and going, okay, maybe it's something I'm doing, and how can I do something a little different? And that journey is
right.
So hard.
Well, we all have friends when they become single, initially people are trying to set them up. And a few years goes by, and all of a sudden you might notice friends aren't trying to set up that person anymore because that common denominator is that person. And pretty soon, even though the friends think, man, that's a great person, in the back of their minds, they're saying, there must be something wrong, because on the surface, this person looks great, but these relationships keep failing, and it seems like for the same reason.
That's like your friend is like, the guy you set me up with, don't do that. Don't ever do that ever again. That was really, thanks, but don't do that again. That's funny. So in your opinion, how important is it for men to have a social or friendship network, especially after, from what I understand, and I'm speaking from personal experience, after a long-term relationship has ended, it's obviously really devastating, and not talking about those guys that are like, oh, sweet, I'm divorced now, I'm going to go out and have as much fun as I can. Talk about those guys like I gave everything, and I was dedicated, and I provided, and I protected, and then she left me, for somebody else, and oh my gosh. And in those situations, I believe it's more of the guy has developed a social network for her friends, and when that split occurs, who's he got? Probably very little to none. He might have maybe 1 or 2 really close friends, but still that social network, that connection, has disappeared.
And that's so important. I worry actually about especially the next generation of men, because we've done such a good job in our generation to show the next generation how to disconnect. And we haven't done a good job to show them how to connect.
Right.
And, men, especially even outside of the relationships, when they retire, there's a, they, I believe, are the highest level of depression that happens after retirement versus women. And a lot of this is because, this is historically, and it's even worse now, I could imagine, guys, when they're younger, they make friends because of sports or activities. And then the workplace, they make friends because of what they're doing at work, in their work groups.
Sure.
Then when they retire, they don't have those activities if they haven't learned how to make connections outside of that. And so this next generation that went through the pandemic and had, virtual classes sometimes, and then now with work, they're having virtual workplaces. I really worry about this next generation of young men when they go through these things like a divorce, the end of a, relationship. They haven't had the skills instilled in them or even modeled to them on how to connect.
Right.
I talked to a friend of mine who has been moved to different cities, throughout his career. I've known him maybe for 7 years, and he's been in 4 different cities. But every time he has this good group of friends.
Yeah.
And so I said, how do you make friends like this?
I was just going to ask, what's your secret, man?
Well, he said before he went to college, his parents taught him they told him, wherever you end up, join 3 different places. Join a health or fitness club or something health related. Join a nonprofit that you're interested in, and join some type of arts group. Whether, that means music, reading, visual arts, whatever it is. Right. And so every time he goes to a new city, he joins those 3 types of groups. Right. And it's a numbers game. But then you end up with a variety of people, and some people are going to stick.
Right.
And I think that's great advice.
What do you think about those guys that are going like, okay, I'm supposed to go out and join a club and be outgoing? And I've also heard of, go to a fancy schmancy restaurant and hang out at the bar, and you can meet people that way.
Yeah.
Met your friend. And just trying to be outgoing. These guys, and I'm again speaking from experience, it's like, okay, I got to get off the couch and go outside, that kind of stuff. And it's just, I think it goes to, it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to kind of maybe even just be in that awkward feeling for a little while. It's like, this is something new. This is something I'm not, is this right? I don't think I like tennis very much. Why would I join a tennis? That kind of stuff. Yeah. Why would I, do some volunteer work or something like that? But I think it's also very important to go, once you get into it, once you start doing it, and once you start initiating that, you're like, oh, it's really not that bad.
And it's awkward at first. I know it's awkward at first. As you know, I traveled to all 50 states, met a stranger in every state and shared a meal. And so I had to set up these quote unquote dates. I mean, they were like friendship dates, right? I was meeting women across the U.S., but asking somebody to sit down just to meet with me, to talk to me, it started out awkward, but honestly, it gets easier as it goes along. I had a guy friend that says that, he always has dates. He has no problems because he's not afraid to put himself out there.
Right.
And he laughs about it. He goes, so somebody says no. I'm used to rejection, and he kind of holds it like a badge.
I've said that before. It's like, I was talking to my my director about something, and I'm like, well, I'm thinking about doing, blah blah blah, and she's like, well, we gotta, I'm like, oh, the worst thing that can happen is say no, and I'm like, I've had plenty of that. It doesn't matter. It's okay.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh my gosh, yeah. I'm like, yeah, guys are kind of, some guys are used to like, I don't know. You're like, okay, that's fine. And I think that's something where a skill you got to develop through exposure of just being okay with being told no. It's not a personal slight. It's not devastating. It's not a reflection of who you are as a person. That's just not right timing, or just there's like whatever. But it's okay to be like, okay. And the biggest thing I think would be to be able to accept and just be like, okay, and walk away.
Yeah.
I appreciate
if it's meant for you, it won't pass you by.
Right. If it's meant. Yeah. If there's something going on there, if there's a connection, great. If it's like, no, thank you, just walk away. Because, it shouldn't be thought of as a slight or an ego dent or anything to that. It's just not there it's just not there. There's no chemistry or something.
And it's a confidence, even a rejection could be a confidence booster if you think of it as, if you can boost your confidence by doing things that scare you. And if that's what scares you, asking people out or starting up a conversation, try to do something every day that scares you. And I had a client once, and she described herself as an introvert, and I would describe her as an introvert as well.
Right.
So for her, it was simply saying hello to somebody after a yoga class, not even for a date, but simply trying to strike up a conversation.
Sure.
That was something that scared her. And what she realized from trying that, it started to get natural, and it started to feel okay.
Yep.
And then she started realizing by the end of our coaching time together, she was like, I can't stop talking to people. I'm even talking to people on the airplane.
Now she's like, help me with talking to people. And now she's like, help me with stop talking to people. I'm on this is too much. That's hilarious. I have an extreme, you remind me of it, like an extreme example of basically immersing yourself. It's a military thing where they, everyone is put behind a berm and they fire live rounds. And at the first, everyone's
That's
like...
called immersing yourself? That seems like you need a bigger description than that.
This is how I understand it.
Okay.
Is like, so for soldiers to get used to that sound and that experience, it's like live fire, and it's going over your head, obviously, but they're behind the berm, they're protected, but just the sound and everything, and knowing it's scary. It is like heart rate is like 200 or whatever. And the more they do it, the more relaxed they get. And in the end, it's
Really?
like, oh yeah, no, but yeah, live rounds. What do you want to do for lunch? There was another example I had. I think it was the moon landing. I think it was Neil Armstrong. He was flying the lander.
Yeah.
And he had so much experience prior to that. Under the pressure, I think he was going down to, it was like, you're running out of fuel, you need to land this thing in 5 seconds, or, it's going to be a disaster, all these pressures, and you're on the moon. And so, and he was obviously able to land it and came out okay, but I guess apparently his heart rate didn't get above 80 beats a minute. Like he's like,
wow,
yeah, okay, got it. What's for lunch now? What are we doing? But just immersing yourself. So your friend saying hello is just way too scary.
Yeah.
And then immersing herself in that, just, realizing that you're not going to explode. Everything's going to be okay. Right. You're still going to be whole afterwards.
And you're rewriting your narrative, right? You're rewriting your narrative on what's scary, how people are going to respond to you. What I was thinking about earlier when I lost my thought, I was just thinking about connection and the differences that there could be between men and women. So we've all heard of fight or flight, right? The stress response, and that study was done on men. And so there's a theory with women called tend and befriend. And these are generalities, but in general, they say women, when they're under stress, they tend to those they need to take care of, often they're young, and then they befriend. They grab their girlfriends. And so they form this protective fence, let's say, of friends to protect them. Sure. So our natural response as women a lot of times is to go out and connect. That's how we feel safe. Okay. To men, it might look like we're gossiping about them, but if you look at it, we're really trying to grab our girlfriends to say, this is what I'm going through. Can you hold my hand and keep me safe? And they tell us their stories, and they remind us that you're going to be okay. Yeah. And men, if they're used to fight or flight, as their just natural gut response when stress happens, and something like a relationship falls apart and their social circle then falls apart, they can withdraw and not connect, or, be combative, which doesn't help connection at all either. Yeah. So I do think for men, it could be especially hard to connect and find their social footing after a relationship ends.
Do you think that just trying to get out there and get over that fight or flight response is one of the biggest obstacles? Guys that are, just getting out of a long-term relationship, unsure where to go, that might be really holding them back?
Definitely. And recognizing what they're doing. The fight might take the form of drinking more at home alone or something like that, or just diving into work and not connecting. Right? Not connecting. Right. So I think recognizing that might be the response, and really pushing yourself to go out there and do it even when it doesn't feel good. Yeah.
I think some of the things I suggest to guys when they're recovering is first, just take care of yourself. Don't pursue anybody else. Don't try and be like, okay, I'm just going to go out there and just start meeting ladies now and blah, blah, blah. Just take care of yourself first. And I really like to say this. I heard this, it was a speech by, I think it's Admiral McCraven. And he just starts off by, if you want to change the world, make your bed. Mm. You know, I think I where it's just like, start doing the little things to improve yourself. And if your house is a mess, it probably means you're a mess. If your place where you live in is just unorganized, it's a reflection of yourself. Start by making your bed. It just takes a minute, you know, and then kind of go from there. I like to say, brush your teeth after that.
Yeah, that's...
You know, take care of your dishes, clean up your dishes, you know, make sure things are nice and pristine in there, and then carry that over to your work and start looking at other things. Join a club.
Yeah, join a club. I wonder if that's so hard to do, right? I mean, it makes so much sense what you're saying, but so hard to do, to sit with yourself. And I wonder, and I'm just putting this out there, I wonder if it's harder with dating apps now. Sure. Because before, you know, it's you can't necessarily go out there as easily. You actually did have to put yourself out there and connect. Right. You know, so even after a breakup, you would actually at least, you know, go to a bar, go to some social place to connect. Sure. Now, a breakup happens and you just download an app and you're connecting supposedly, right, with a lot of people. Yeah. And so I wonder if your advice is harder with so much available now.
So things, in my opinion, things like a dating app for guys, things like a dating app is kind of a sedative. It's a buffer. It still creates a gap. And just from what I am aware of from dating apps, it is so disadvantageous for a guy to get on an app. You're competing. It's like a 3-to-1, 5-to-1 guy-gal ratio, and so if you're an average guy just trying to get on a date, you're probably not even going to get swiped on. Whereas you hear about women like, oh, I did like, I don't know, 1,500 swipes. And I just can't find that guy. You know, and then you see the guys looking and they're like, yes. And they're just like, okay, I went through everybody and now I can't get, there's no new, and no one's responding. And it's like, all right. So what are some of those issues? Because I think on the dating apps, it's more of like the visual appearance first. Right. You know, and women are like, okay, his pictures aren't that great. He doesn't look that cute. No, you know, just like that. But if you met that person live, wherever, at a charity function or something, and he's helping out, I'm trying to rescue some animals. I put this together, was able to gather, you know, how are you? He's not staying with a large fish in front of his bathroom mirror. Oh, that's not good. Yeah, okay, with his shirt off. Guys, did you hear that? Okay. Yeah, don't do topless photos with your fish. With a fish in your bathroom mirror with your bed behind it. Yeah, and this is a woman from Seattle. Yeah. So, yeah. But yeah, it's like, what is your appearance that you're putting on a dating app where you're already competing, you know, with a ton of guys and maybe one woman. Yeah. You know, and then the whole age restriction and then the height restrictions. You know, I heard something to where a guy lied about his height. I think he's like 5'10" or 5'11". That's happened always. Always, right. Yeah. Very common, isn't it? Yes, and age too for men. Oof. They're lying about their age. Yeah, one of the things I tried, and it's not easy, but it's something I think all guys should really, to be a man of integrity, there are things you shouldn't do. It's like, don't lie, cheat, or steal, and don't tolerate those that do. And just start practicing that. And I heard that from a guy, his name is Michael Sartain. He has a group where he teaches men, and that's like one of his things to follow. It's like, we don't lie, cheat, or steal, and we don't tolerate those who do. And you start looking at that, and it almost develops a sense of accountability for a guy. Definitely. Yeah. So when you're on the apps, and it's kind of this cope, you know, it's a buffer. It's like, you can lie, you can be deceitful. Even the filters. Like, oh, I'm going to look great on here. But then you meet the person live, you're like, are you the same person? Because suddenly you just aged like 20 years. What happened? You know? But when this guy, he said he was 6 foot, you know, and I guess he got, you know, a like on his, they met. And I think at first, from what I understand, I could be botching this story. Okay. But I think she might have been a little disappointed, but they got along so well and they connected. I think it was like 6 months later or whatever it was, they got married.
Wow.
So it was just like, hey, I had to even lie to get you to come meet me, and I'm really a decent guy. Whereas if you meet somebody in person, it's like you already know who they are, you got a good idea, and meeting somebody through, like a social function or like the volunteer work, or if you have a bunch of friends getting introduced to some, it's a good way to meet people is if you're introducing a friend to a friend, as long as that person, if the guy's a man of integrity, has his stuff together and has worked on himself, absolutely meet, here's a friend.
Yeah, that's ideal, I think.
Yes,
You already had somebody that did the FBI check on them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, background check is complete. He's checked some boxes. He's a decent person. He's good. Or it's like, I'm not introducing you, and
Yeah.
But it's just, I think it's really good to get to know. That's another thing I would suggest. It's like, have female friends. If you're a guy, just make female. Don't try and sleep with them. Just be friends with them, and then I think that helps the guy understand how women think, and what they're looking for, and why they look for certain things, and what they're really attracted to. And guys we're very delusional. It's like, oh, if somebody looks at me just like a glance, like, oh my God, shit.
Yeah, that's what I've learned.
We are very delusional. And so a lot of guys, it's like, just relax, just get to know the person, talk to her like she's a buddy. Hey, you watch football, what are you into? And just, don't try and see when just, if they made accomplishments, support that. If they're struggling with something, help them out. But don't try and, just get to know them, and they'll feel comfortable enough to tell you what's going on. I agree. Tell me when I'm,
No, I agree. We talked about this before this interview about dating, right? And you told me you don't recommend that people start dating at all right after a long...
Yeah.
And I have to agree with you. I do want to say, and you can tell me what you think of this, when the person is ready to start dating. I shared with you what I did. And I said, okay, during this period of time, I'm only going on first dates.
Right.
And I use the apps.
Yeah.
And I put on the apps, I'm just going on first dates right now. And if we're both single the next year, we could have, a second date. That was my idea, at least. That's not necessarily how it worked out, but that was my idea. But you know what it did for me is, one, it put us all on the same playing field. The guys didn't expect anything from me. We were able to sit down. Somebody could have been a different height maybe than what my ideal would be, or did a different type of job than what I would have thought my ideal. But because I was doing this to explore what I really connected with, I was more open with who I sat down and met with. And for me, that helped me understand what values I really like and who I actually connect with.
Perfect.
And that was a good learning experience for myself.
So why did you decide to do that?
I decided to do this because...
like one day. Like, we're only going out on one date.
Yeah,
where did that come from?
Oh, because of my travels around the U.S. where I met a stranger in every state and shared a meal with her, I realized some women I sat down with and I felt like we were high school, college buddies, right? We were ready to plan our next girls' trip together. While others, the conversation was fine, but we didn't connect immediately at that level. And I thought, okay, what is that? And I realized because I was meeting these women so close together, I was able to notice the difference right away. I thought, okay, if I did this with men when I date, then I would, if I dated so many guys, first dates only, so close together, I will, really understand what I'm looking for without any pressure to, dress up a certain way. Is this going to be a long-term fit? Can I imagine what he'll look like in 10 years from now wearing a CPAP machine? That.
Yeah. So, and we don't have to go there, but what broke the rule?
I ended up dating somebody. I ended up in a relationship that happened. And it actually was somebody that would have been outside of my perimeters before going into it, and ended up in about a year-long relationship with this person.
So you broke your rule for this guy.
I did. That happened by accident,
Did you say, I'm not supposed to be going on a second date with you?
Well, you know what I realized, actually, because I wanted to learn three things. One, how to date, because I'd been married for 27 years. I wanted to know who is out there, because I've heard, there's no good guys out there from a lot of my single friends. And I found that is absolutely not true. There are a lot of good guys out there.
Yes.
And I wanted to find out if I was dateable. Would people be interested in me? And so those were my 3 objectives. And by the time I had gone out with him, I thought, okay, I don't need to do this because I actually know I got all those 3 things answered. So I decided not to, for lack of better words, waste my time and waste somebody else's time doing all these first dates.
So it sounds like you really put some boundaries set, like, hey, everybody, this is a boundary I have. I'm not going to really, not to say you're not going to cross it, but this is what I'm starting at. Mm-hmm. Either if guys are like, oh, if there's not even this chance for a second date, good. Yeah. Let's weed them out.
And I had that, I had guys that say, hey, I'm not looking for a first date. I'm looking for my last first date. Perfect. It's good that we had that established because that's not where I'm at. Ooh. But also, because these dating apps, everyone knows that people are dating other people. Wait,
what?
Sorry.
Just kidding.
But by doing this, I wasn't kissing these guys at the end, of these dates. I wasn't hooking up with these guys. So everyone knew that if we ended up later going on a second date, third date, there was a level of trust built.
Right.
Because of that openness from the very beginning. So I thought that was really helpful, trying to navigate this dating world in these apps that was new to me.
Do you find that a lot of women on the dating apps, they maybe don't put like their boundaries, like, hey, this is really, actually, what am I talking about? I was on the dating apps a few years ago and I saw a list. She literally had like 25 items of like, I got to be this and this and this and this. I'm not, I can understand people having boundaries, but it was more of like, you need to be blah, 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 blah. And I think to say, this is what I'm looking for. This is my boundary for me. And what did you say? You were like, am I dateable?
Yeah.
That's really just looking at yourself going, wow, how am I going to really be able to have a decent relationship, the relationship I want?
Yeah. And at this age, I'm in my mid 50s. I don't know what's out there. I've learned now as I've traveled the country, there are pockets of the U.S. where, in your 50s, it's harder than other places as a woman because the men are dating younger women. So there's that question. Are men in my age group only looking for 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds? Right. So I had these questions, and luckily the answers came out all in my favor or all in women's favor or men's favor in this middle age group.
Yeah. I think it's really important that you put it out there saying, this is my brand, this is what I need from me. This is who I am, blah, blah, blah. Rather than saying, I want you to be 6 foot. I want you to be, trust fund baby. The whole, you heard that song, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would agree with you. It's very important to put, what your intentions are first. So there's the expectations are kind of revealed, what's out there, what you're going into before you even meet the person. And I think, that's one way to kind of go forward. And, if you're meeting somebody at, you're meeting a bunch of friends at a restaurant and they introduce you to somebody that you've already got that background check. You already know what, hey, this person's so-and-so.
Yeah.
They like this. They don't like this. They're looking for this. They don't want to do that. You kind of already get an idea of who they are. And so you don't even have to put it down. That's why I think the social circle is really important, and making that connection is really important, and understanding yourself is really important going forward.
Yeah, definitely. So connection's everything. Right? Connection's everything. We were talking before about becoming more minimalistic in material items.
Yes.
And that's something I've been working on because at the end of the day, it really is about connection with people. That makes everyone happy. Yeah. It's not the stuff.
And I would say for guys that are starting over, and it's like, work on yourself, start figuring out where you're, where you can start improving yourself. And then when you get into those, friendship relationships, one thing I would caution a guy to do is like, don't start saying, I just, I'm recovering from this relationship and I'm really feeling sad. Don't go to your new friends that are women and start, being, showing that you're a victim and complaining and all that kind of stuff. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, it's really not attractive.
No, just in general, guys or women, it's okay to stay in victim place for a hot minute,
a hot minute.
Yeah. But when you get to a point where it becomes your identity, then that's not attractive. It's not healthy. And that just means you feel like you're stuck.
Right.
Being a victim of means that you're at the will of, you feel like you're stuck and that you don't have choice or opportunity. And you always have choice or opportunity. You might not like your choice or your opportunities, but you always have choice or opportunity. I believe in everything in life. Even when life throws you a big curveball, you have choice or opportunity of how you're going to deal with that.
Yeah, and it's just executing. It's just getting the will to execute it. It's really tough. I like your analogy where it was like the mess around you is an opportunity to be empowered. Can you dive a little? It kind of, I'm getting a sense of like, you know, that's where you were going, and if you can dive a little more into that.
Yeah, you know, when everything falls apart and all your plans fall apart, you know, all your dreams or what you thought your future was, that's opportunity. If you don't have plans, that means everything's available to you, right?
Sure.
Everything's available to you when you don't, you know, let's just say, you know, in a divorce, you've lost maybe the family home you had to sell and different things are happening.
Right.
That's a chance for restart. And you've been given this opportunity to go, hey, what can my life look like now?
Right.
You're at a place in your life where you're older, have more life experience, not doing a checklist thing that we often do if we've got married in our 20s or early 30s. We're kind of checklists, you know, we're going to do our career, our marriage, or have our kids, have our 2 Labrador dogs. And, you know, sometimes life has to go through an upheaval to give you a clean slate.
Right. Right. Yeah. And we talked about this before, where for men, once they're, you know, going through the divorce, it can be really devastating. And again, we're not talking about those guys that are like, I'm going to get this and I deserve this and this is my house and blah, 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 and just being very aggressive and just very, you know, unempathetic. It's like, okay, we're splitting, and then, oh my gosh, I thought I was doing everything for her and I was trying to provide for her, and I got this house for her, and we got children and the 2 dogs and everything. And then we go through court and I find out she's with another guy and she's taking my house and she's taking the kids, and and it's just, for a man, everything that they felt they built up, you know, tried to provide and, you know, had felt this duty to protect is just wiped. And it's crushing for these guys. Just where they're like, and that's why and we talked about this too, the suicide rate in general, men, higher suicide for women. I think it's like 4 times higher. Guys that are divorced after divorce, it's 8 times higher.
Wow.
And it's just, you know, I could see, I have, you know, from no studies I can think of on my mind, you know, but what I understand is like it's 8 times higher, and I can only imagine it's because they feel that everything is taken away from them, everything they've accomplished with guys, you know, that's where we get our confidence from, is just accomplishing things and working with other guys to accomplish something and build something up and saying, yeah, I was able to provide this to my family and I was able to protect them, and, you know, we did these great things, and now that's all gone. It's so crushing to start looking at that as like, okay, it's a clean slate. You now have a blank canvas. Don't look at it as just a blown up crater.
Yeah, there's an opportunity there. And I understand that with men, especially, you know, a lot of guys are raised with the idea of this is what you need to do as a man. You need to provide for your family, you need to work, and men, you know, can dive into their workplace, and so they aren't spending the time with the family, especially maybe in a tradition, you know, I'll say traditional for lack of better words, home, where the wife is staying at home taking care of the kids. And when this happens, part of it, you know, that you can see the value that the man provided money-wise. Sure. It's hard to see the value that the woman might have provided because it doesn't translate into money.
Right.
And so when there's a divorce, it's very easy for the guy to feel like he lost everything he built.
Right.
And that also feels like a big hit, and you could get very bitter about that. I do think it helps to try to look at what the other partner added to the relationship. And then it feels like, hey, it makes sense that she got, you know, half of what we built together. You just had different roles.
Sure.
And when someone's able to see it, maybe it won't hurt as much because at least you can see where you receive value in the relationship. But yeah, I get it. It's not easy. You know, I'm not too far out of my divorce, and I get it. And I know my former husband, I feel like it's probably harder on him in many ways because he didn't have those connections that you described that men have, and he is a workaholic.
Right. Yeah, and we get caught up in stuff.
Yeah.
What I realized after my divorce was, you know, where can I do things differently? What can I do for the next relationship? And what I understand is also how can I keep myself attractive? How can I show her that I'm still attracted to her? And that's something that I think it needs to be done quite often, if not daily. I like to use a lot of James Sexton. A lot of his quotes and that kind of stuff, as far as like watching his podcast and everything. And one of the things he said, I think in his book was, a little yellow Post-it. And just let her know, hey, thinking of you, love you, have a great day. Just little things to know that you still are attracted to her, that you still cherish her.
Like you're dating still.
Like you're dating still. Absolutely. Just to show that she's an important part of your life, that you show some appreciation for everything that she has done. I think in general that will be reciprocated. And
I think it also helps the other person from feeling bitter, maybe, because it reminds you that, hey, this person's adding value to my life. There was a couple, the woman I met during my travels in Huntsville, Alabama. She said, I asked her, how long have you been married? And her answer was, my husband, she said 27 years. And then she said, but if you ask my husband, he will always say not long enough.
Yeah, that's great.
And I thought, man, that's such a great way to look at a long-term marriage, because so many times, you ask somebody how long you've been married and they're like, oh, well, it's 30 years here. I mean, they answer as if they've been put into a death sentence or
it's
something.
It's a burden to be in this relationship. And it's like, well, they've done serious time is the way they're answering. I'm still in prison.
Yeah, 30 years. Oh man, it's been 25. I mean, and I thought, wow, that's such a great way to answer. No matter who asks him at whatever point in their marriage, he always says, not long enough.
I was in Costa Rica with a group, and we were doing a tour of a coffee where they were growing the beans and everything. And the group I was with had, there were couples and some of their children, grown children. Couples were like in their 60s, 70s. And there was one couple, and what you're reminding me of is this one couple, like he's like, oh babe, go and pick some, and I'll take a video of it. Go pick some beans, and and his wife's up there, and he's like, oh, gorgeous. You look absolutely gorgeous. Just complimenting her. And they're like I think they were in their late 70s, or excuse me, late 60s, early 70s. And you can just tell how much he adored her and just really was in love with her. And you could see how much she appreciated that. And it was just like, they're going to stay together forever. Yeah. Just from that bond. So that kind of reminded me of what you were just talking about. It's just those little things of like, not long enough. Yeah. Yeah. And if the guy can lead like that, and just being like, I'm going to keep myself attractive, and I'm going to make sure to let you know that I am still attracted to you. That kind of stuff. I think that those things are really important.
I think so too.
For going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. So little things about, getting empowered. You have a clean slate. It's like, it's devastating, and it's, deal with that and, start figuring things out. And then when you get to that point, you're going to realize, you've got opportunities to do something really powerful. Yeah, when your plans, that means everything's open to you, right? Yeah. I mean, when you don't have plans and things kind of went a different way, now you have a chance to redesign. That's really important to say, rather than going, everything's just this deep crater and it's just dark and horrible. It's like, okay, it's a clean slate now. It is, and looking at it that way, it's, you can call it rose-colored glasses, but if the person who's looking at it in that way versus the person who has the same situation, they're looking at it as, woe is me, I lost everything, everything's terrible, I can't, how do I do this? They're experiencing the exact same thing. The effects on their body and their health will be entirely different. And our brains are wired to look for what we're focused on, to find what we focus on. And so if we're going to focus on despair and not moving forward, we're going to find it. Right. If we're going to focus on opportunity and new horizons, we're going to find those. Yeah, absolutely. I really like what you're talking about as far as the inner voice you have in your head. And I think when there's something really traumatic happening, I think everyone, well, not everyone, but there might be maybe a bunch of guys that are just going to revert back to their old ways on how they, survived as a little child. Maybe they're going to withdraw. Maybe they're going to just pull back. Maybe they're just going to cut everybody off. Maybe they're going to hide from all, just not face any of the realities of stuff. That thing of like, you shouldn't, the inner voice, it's like, oh, this happened to you for a reason. You shouldn't converse with anybody. You shouldn't blah, blah, blah. Right? Right. And I'm going to deviate a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
But
It's your podcast.
Yeah. I have this whiteboard I have at home, and I write all these quotes on there from people I just really admire. And there was one from, I think Bruce Lee, quoted this, and he says, "Don't speak negatively about yourself. Your body doesn't know the difference." You mentioned that. Words are energy, and they cast spells.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And that's why it's called spelling. Change the way you speak about yourself, and you can change your life.
Absolutely. The stories we tell ourselves changes everything about ourselves.
100%. And I kind of go back to what some of the things your father taught you. It's like, it's okay to, make mistakes. Just learn from them. Don't let it destroy you or deviate from your purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really quick, I had a client that was a professional obstacle racer.
Nice.
And she said in her sport, the older athletes do better than the younger athletes a lot of times. And the theory is because they've had obstacles before. And so they just know from confidence that they can go around them. They know how to deal with them. And I just think that, you talked about how, you might go back and react like you did when you were younger to something. And that's a good question to ask ourselves, especially in relationships that go haywire. Are we reacting from our teenage pain, our first relationship breakup? Are we reacting from those points in life? Or are we reacting with our adult mentality and what we know now?
Or even younger, like when you're a little, for me, it's like a little boy, and the things I learned when I was a little, under 10, 8 years old, 7 years old. It doesn't necessarily equate, like the things you do to help you survive, the things I did to help me survive, a rough childhood, doesn't necessarily equate to having good relationships when you're an adult.
Right.
So how you protect yourself as a kid, may be hindering you as an adult. Because, I can say like when you're growing up, your mom's there for you. Like as a little boy growing up, mom's there for you, and you can do no wrong, and you're doing great, And then you go to school, and your teacher, she's like, okay, turn this in. You're like, okay, great. You're doing great work. And then you go to university, and it's like, oh yeah, I did good at this, and she's, I'm getting good grades with her, and she's telling me how great I am, and blah, blah, blah. And then you get out in the dating world, and it's like the exact opposite. You're not rewarded for your efforts. And then that's why the nice guys may finish last, is because I thought you wanted, me to give you flowers and, say nice things to you. And I thought, you asked me to do this and I did it. And now you're leaving me because you said I'm too nice. Guys don't, it's like guys are, whoa. We don't, it takes a while for us to, wait, what? It takes a little while. But I think that's also just understanding human nature and how people interact. How women interact in a relationship and what they're looking for and what they desire and what they're attracted to. So boys are like the influence of a woman. It's like, oh, you're doing great. Everything's fine. Let me protect you from the world. And then you get out there and it's like, oh, it's really rough.
That's interesting. I never thought of it that way, but that is so interesting.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. When I'm driving home, I'll start thinking about that.
No, it's something I was thinking about a few years ago. It's just how boys are raised and the influence of women when they're being raised. And especially maybe a little boy that experienced trauma, what they go through, and they look for, a woman's role in that life could be very like, oh, it's very helpful, very protecting, very nurturing. And then you get out there and it's like, why am I being treated poorly? I don't have this image of women. And I think a lot of nice guys go through that. Of like, I thought I'm supposed to be this way, and I'm getting yelled at. I'm reminded of, and I talked about this, I think where I went shopping, for ice cream. I'm going to get some dessert because I'm an ice cream guy. I like desserts. And I'm going down the freezer aisle, and there's a couple there. And the guy's looking for some ice cream, and his wife is a little further down the aisle. And I'm looking for my chocolate on chocolate chip ice cream. I'm like, all right. and I'm like, dude, move out of my way. I'm still looking. And you see him kind of trying to look, and he starts approaching his wife and stuff. And he kind of glanced at me, and you could kind of see him already kind of physically trying to protect himself. Slouch his shoulders. His head shrunk down a little. He's like, oh, and like the body language is like, are you preparing for something? But I was like, all right, I gotta get out of here. And in the corner of my eye, I hear him whisper something, and then she snaps around. The look in her eye was like just, I want to say fury, but it was like, she was like angry, irritated.
Yeah.
I think it's a good word. And she's like, just pick something. And I was like, dude, I think I got a podcast for you. I got some things that could help you out. But just that public shaming was just like, oh, and he was like, okay with it. And it's like, oh, dude. And you could see him like, I'm trying to, do the right thing. And I'm trying to get, and you could tell he's just crushed.
That's painful.
It's so painful. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, don't. Don't. Pick something, bro. And just say, I got this. Yeah. And if she doesn't like it, go, okay, what do you want? I just was thinking of like 10,000 different ways to approach that. And just like, and I'm not saying I haven't been there. I've been there. And it's just like so cringy. It's like, oh, dude. But
yeah.
Anyway, I go off on a rant.
No, we want to treat everyone with respect, and especially those that are closest to us.
Yeah. I think one of the things we talked about before we get on the podcast was the influence. It's like where you're coming from is just a point of just not only loving those, but loving yourself, and just kind of just getting that energy out there. And if you start, I think for guys, once they start working on themselves and being like, you really are a decent person. You really are trying to look out for the people. A man with integrity.
Yeah.
We don't lie, cheat, or steal, and we don't, tolerate those that do. We follow we own our actions. We take accountability for ourselves. We don't say stuff and not do it. We do what we say, that kind of stuff.
And just be yourself,
Just be yourself.
Authentic self. The word weird is, not that your listeners are weird, but the word weird, the root of it is spelled W-Y-R-D, and it means fate or destiny. And so when people start to embrace their weird, their imperfections, that's when they start attracting. You think of everyone that you look up to, even celebrities or big business leaders, there's something weird about them, something that makes them unique.
Yeah.
And so, if being afraid to be weird is holding you back from making, doing something different, asking people out, talking to people, embrace that weird is what I always say.
I think there's nothing wrong with if for guys are out there and they're like, gosh, the girls I date keep telling me I'm weird. Ask them why. Go, I know I'm a little weird. What do you think? What's weird about me? Just go ahead and embrace that for a second. And then if they say that to you, part of it is probably because they like you. If they feel comfortable enough to say, yeah, you're kind of weird, bro, then go, yeah, I know. What do you think is weird about me? Make it a conversation rather than something to be, oh, it's a slight. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. You called me weird. I shouldn't do that anymore. Yeah. You're basically hiding who you really are.
And remind them, hey, they're weird. They're hanging out with you.
Yeah. And like what you just said, the weird thing is what may get you to be very successful.
Yes.
And other people are going to be like, he's got a weird quirk, but he's done very well for himself, and he's got a great social network, and he's taking care of it, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But just being embracing the weirdness rather than hiding from it. I think that's really important. That book, Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Oh yeah.
Just sit in it. And it's really like find a safe space. If you want to reach out to your best friend, I'm going to be like sitting in my bed, and if I need to, I'm going to call you. Whatever you need to do to set some safety things up. But it's okay to sit in that discomfort for a while. I think it's very important.
I agree.
So just a bit of a recap.
Yeah.
I can't even remember. We talked about so much stuff.
We talked about so many things. We did good.
Basically, we did good. Yeah, I like that. Basically, just how to start over. If you're a guy, obviously we're talking about guys here, but guys starting over, it's going to be dark for a little while. It's going to be hard. It's going to be painful. But there is something else out there that you may not even know of, but it's okay to pursue it. If there's a book.
What I think of is Les Brown says, your setback is your setup for your comeback.
Yeah.
And so this setback that anyone might be going through, it's just a setup for the comeback.
Yeah.
And it takes just a little bit of work, just putting yourself out there just a little bit at a time.
Right. Yeah. And just embracing it and just being okay with it. Definitely. I did want to give a shout out to some of your books.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. You have the book Table for 51.
Yes. That's my most recent one. Yes.
Yeah. Fabulous. The 50-50 Friendship Flow.
Yeah, that's a 3-book series. It's primarily journaling books. And those 3 are more women-centered for journaling. But, hey, hey, guys could pick them up and learn something
Sure.
about maybe how women think.
Absolutely. There's guys should not only learn about themselves, but if they're having trouble with relationships, learn about how a woman
Yeah.
is. So is that the 3 books, is that Make Your Mess Your Message and Ask Yourself This?
Yeah, and fit the 50-50 friendship flow.
That's like that's like the flagship one.
Yeah.
To start off.
Exactly.
Are you working on any other books?
We'll see. I have one in mind. So I am in the process of possibly moving out of state.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do that, I will be writing about starting over from no community, no anchor in a new area.
Right. Do you have a title or anything?
I don't, but hopefully the ending turns out well.
What did you say? A new anchor?
Without an anchor.
Without an anchor.
Yeah, without an anchor.
You have a new ship.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
Okay,
we'll see.
cool.
We'll see.
And where can people book a coaching session with you?
So my website, it's a long name. It's called animperfectlyperfectlife.com. Or just, if you look up my name, Shari, Shari, Leid, Leid, Google, and, I'm on all the social media places, and I respond.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, you get your entire story out there.
Yeah.
And seriously, yeah, your entire story is out there.
Yeah, open book.
Yeah, Table for 51 is not just meeting new people, but it's also a really deep dive into your own personal life. It's really nice that you did
Yes.
that. Yeah. Anything else you'd like to share?
No, this was great, and talking to you has been fabulous. Just and even just you saying, I mentioned to you when I first met you, you telling me that this is kind of how guys often feel when a divorce happens or when a relationship breaks down. Like they tried so hard to provide.
Some guys, yeah.
And now this, some guys. Yeah. And for me, that offered a piece of healing in that I was able to see my former husband in that statement.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just appreciate what you're doing.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you coming in and talking. This was fabulous. I really enjoyed it. This was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining the Glen Gilbert Connection. You can like, subscribe, reach me at theglengilbertconnection@gmail.com. Thank you.